Hi, my name is Natalie Stratton, and this is my persuasive speech about how people with addiction can redeem themselves with God's values. And today I'm talking to my family, all of them right there. And okay, so I'm going to continue. So, my thesis statement is as sinners, we can fall into evil things such as addiction. But if we redeem ourselves by remembering God's values, family, honesty, and self control, and his rightful authority over our bodies, we can have a successful life that he wants us to have. My first example is not even the church is safe from the evils of addiction. One of the statistics I read in the Tribune Business News is that 50% of people in the church, in the families, they are dealing with addictions within them. And that's crazy. You think people in churches wouldn't have that much of a problem, but it is a huge problem. So because of that, a man started a rehab center within his church, and one of his workers' name is Robert Strauss. And he himself was a former addict, and he is now helping other people get help. And this shows that he finally realized that God has the rightful authority over his body. And how I know that is by what he said is, it took me 9 months to understand my true relationship with God, and that it was not all about what I did ultimately freed me from addiction. So what he was saying is that once he realized that his body is not his and that it's God's, he was able to turn his life back around and live his life the way God wanted him to. Which brings me to my next point, which is God values honesty, and we know that from the Alban text on page 73. And an example of how addiction can make someone not honest is by making bad choices for their family, by taking the money, by making these bad choices. Let me rewind a little bit. The bad choices they're making can cause them to gamble away their rent money, their food money, and even their kids' school tuition. And that is definitely not something that God values. So the way the sinner can turn that around is by remembering that God values honesty, and by admitting your problem and accepting treatment, by maybe going to rehab of some sort. It is a quality that God would like us to live with so that we can get back on track in our life. And that's how someone who's addicted to gambling can redeem themselves. And let me move on to my next point, which is God values family. And this example is a little bit of a different one. I got it from this article on CNN. And it's about this girl named Melissa who was sold into sex trafficking. She herself isn't the one with addiction, but the men and the other people, they're the ones who have the problem with addiction. And what was so amazing about her is that because of her life being sold into sex trafficking, it eventually led to a life of prostitution, stripping, not a life God would want for you. And eventually it led to Melissa having 2 kids. And her kids made her realize that this was a path she didn't want to be on anymore. And eventually, as her kids were growing up, her daughter came home one day and told her, "Mom, this is what God has done for me, and I'm a Christian now." And later that night, that Melissa was inspired by her daughter, and she became a Christian herself. And that shows that God does really value family, and it may be in different ways. Like, she herself didn't suffer from addiction, but her family was a victim of addiction, but still God was able to use his values that he has put forth, that our family will always be there for us, to get her back on track. And in conclusion, addiction is a terrible social problem that exists in the modern age of today. Many families are ripped apart from the evils of addiction. As sinners, we can look to God for forgiveness. Even though we sin every day, if we ask for forgiveness, we can have the experience God wants us to have. And we can do this by remembering God's values and that He values our family, honesty, and our bodies. Thank you very much for listening. Bye.